Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about Nova and maybe a slight amount about Squirrel Girl as well towards the end, but mainly Nova. So anyways, the point being is that many people seem to be disappointed about Nova as a champion, and most certainly his offensive capabilities, because there is quite a lot of scary defensive potential in this guy, which is what we're going to get to a bit later in the video. But when it comes to actually using him and making it feel like worthwhile, he definitely does not seem to be delivering, and that is quite an unfortunate turn of events, I could say, because he was again one of the fan favorites, and after disappointment of Silver Surfer, many people were looking at Noah as like this new hope, I guess you could say, as in kind of a cosmic champion that's coming out, is announced, and hopefully will be great and fun. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So as a base for today's video, and as we get into it, I wanted to give a shout out to Cam from Podcast of Champions. So he has been doing his podcast for, I believe, over a year now, or maybe even two. But I definitely always appreciate his opinion. And in my opinion, he's one of the more kind of knowledgeable and intellectual and reasonable people when it comes to Marvel Concept of Champions. Now, when many of us, and myself included, often are somewhat quick to jump and react and yell foul or whatever else, he often takes a more kind of like reserved stance and still posts his opinions, whether they're positive or whether they're negative, about Kabam and game in general and champions. He also is in content creator program. Even though he doesn't make videos, he does test them and discuss them on his podcast. So there's definitely a good idea to follow him basically and listen to some of his podcasts, because he knows what he's talking about. He's a cool guy, and you can definitely find him on pretty much all of the platforms when you look for Podcast of Champions, and I definitely recommend checking it out. But he also recently tweeted this picture basically about pros and cons he found about Nova, and I'm going to use that as a reference point. Me myself, not being in content creator program, obviously I haven't had yet a chance to play with Nova myself. However, I have watched the more popular content creators and obviously listened to many other people's feedback, and so I'm kind of starting to gather my opinion about Nova. And unfortunately, it is that despite aesthetics, which are absolutely fantastic, the graphics of the champion are crazy good, it looks impressive, fun, interesting, the way he should, basically. Beyond that, he is another citrus-based fruit, I would say. And I'm not going to read every single line for line here from his text, but the main idea is that he definitely seems to possess some extremely great defensive capabilities. He's going to be insane counter to the meta champions, even without any special nodes, because anybody with guaranteed criticals, anybody with True Strike, or anybody with unblockable attacks deals 70% less damage as if they normally would. So that's pretty much comparable to can't stop, won't stop node, more or less, because I think that's 75 and 25%. So that being said, all of our favorite, most used champions there are fairly garbage against him, because that would be Corvus, that would be Ghost, that would be Wasp, and a bunch of others who go unblockable or have True Strike, and so on and so forth. So that automatically kind of makes him a bit of a pain. That combined with his specials being projectiles with somewhat tricky evades definitely speaks quite volumes. And to top it all off, they have given Nova an auto block function that can trigger parry, therefore you're gonna get parried probably, especially initially, fairly frequently when you try to master how to deal with this guy. And lastly, obviously his dash medium attack is energy based and doesn't make contact, therefore he is going to be a lot trickier to parry in many different situations, kind of like Havoc, Ebony Maw, and many others. So that definitely immediately kind of indicates that he's going to be a huge pain in the bottom on defense, which is obviously annoying, but let's face it, defenders are also needed part of the game, but defenders can be made in the sense that they do provide fair amount of offensive utility, which Nova unfortunately does not. when all things considered, Nova doesn't really have a lot going on offensively at all. He can get some Fury buffs, which aren't extremely potent. It is fairly tricky to use, especially considering that this is pretty much a new playstyle, which will probably be difficult to master, and realistically, majority of the player base won't even bother so, because there is hardly any payout in learning completely different playstyle for a champion that's extremely underwhelming on offense. So this is going to be one of those scenarios. Then maybe he's capable of doing something decent. Maybe. It doesn't look like it, but possibly. But the fact of the matter is that 99.99% of the people playing this game won't even bother, because there's not going to be any kind of like great positive press surrounding this guy. Therefore, he's bound to be one of those champions you just place on defense and forget about. Which is extremely unfortunate, because whether we like it or not, the way the champions behave and are used in game do affect the way we look at them overall. And a great example there is Korg. Like when Thor Ragnarok first came out, I absolutely loved the movie. I loved the character, thought he's hilarious. Now I don't even watch the movie anymore because I hate that dude with a passion. I could have an hour-long rant of everything that's wrong with Korg and how it was a really kind of nasty thing to make Korg the champion he was made. And effectively, Korg has a lot of similarities with Nova. It is like extremely strong defensive potential and designed to counter the top meta options. And at the same time, there is pretty much nothing offensively going on for him. So he's kind of like Nova is kind of falling in the lines of, Korg, Annihilus, Mr. Sinister, where, they do have some value as defenders, therefore people will get get Nova. People will rank Nova strictly for defense, in my opinion. Possibly sometimes bring him out to like dust them off in an uncollected monthly event quest, but I doubt we're gonna ever see these champions used competitively in high-end alliance quest, on high-end alliance war offensively, or clearing Act 6 or something of the sort, because damage isn't there. They're tricky to play. Most people won't bother, so that already severely limits the effectiveness. And the few pieces of utility that Nova does have, like True Strike on level 1, it's hard to maintain that 100% uptime, and there are champions who can do it easier and have better damage output. Yes, he can get some buffs for buffed up, but there are many champions who can get 3 buffs, and he can go unblockable, I suppose, for a while, but that arguably is not even that great of a thing for you, because you kind of burn out as soon as that happens. And every single kind of demonstration of what this guy does, you can't really compare him to any top 10, top 15% meta champion kind of like damage. And when it comes to comparing his utility, then even average champions quite often bypass him offensively. So he would be, if I would have to grade Nova as a champion, then he probably gets like a D- in damage department, a D- in offensive utility, A+ in defensive capabilities. And you kind of have to expect better for champions in today's day and age. You definitely do have to expect better. Like Squirrel Girl, for instance, is a perfectly normal champion. She's not OP, she's not crazy, she's not gonna be game-breaking, game-changing, but at least she's fun, man. Like, at least she's interesting to play, she can do relatively high to a decent amount of damage for the level of today's champions. She's interesting to play. And she will get used just like Sunspot does, because Sunspot has some piece of utility, but largely it's just the damage there. So long as the damage is decent, champions do get played, and as long as they're not overly complicated. Squirrel Girl fits the bill. She is fun champion that's relatively easy to use, does good amount of damage, and works, simply. Nova is pretty much none of those things. The animations are cool, yes, damage is not there, utility is not there, he's not easy to play, and he's gonna be one of those champions you kind of hate to see in front of you in a quest. Just like Thing is, just like Korg is, well, Thing maybe less so, but Korg and Annihilus and the rest of the crew that have no offensive capabilities. So overall, I think Kabam gets definitely a failing grade for these month champions. Overall, Squirrel Girl, if she would be the one champion itself, I would say it's perfectly fine. She's a reasonable champion, not game-changing, but a good, interesting, fun addition, positive addition to the contest. Nova, however, is going to be a bane of people's existence for quite a foreseeable future, in my opinion, especially when combined with some really tricky nodes. Yeah, I think that Nova, unfortunately, outside of Alliance War defense, will have no significant impact to your own roster capability. He will obviously have a lot of impact in Marvel Contest of Champions in general, as a nasty defender, as somebody who constantly KOs you and gets some units out of you, but never helps you earn them back, I suppose. So that's pretty much it. That's what I think about Nova and Squirrel Girl to a degree. And that will pretty much do for today's video, yeah. And if you guys like this video, if you guys agree or disagree, or you have any other comments to make, then please be sure to do so. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit all the buttons and all of the other good stuff. See ya. Oh, and one last thing. Do not forget to check out Akam and Podcast of Champions. Follow him on Twitter or check out his YouTube and all of the other good stuff. See ya.